Bord Gais Energy, putting customers at the core of under-20 and senior hurling championship action. #hurling to the core.
Welcome to Croke Park on the eve of the All-Ireland football final. It's the big one, Dublin versus Kerry, and tomorrow we'll either see the first ever 5 in a row or the Kingdom will have their very own Seamus Derby moment. I'm Slattery, delighted to be joined by my co-host Michael Verney on the microphone that's working, as well as our all-star panel of Martin Breheny, Tomás Ó Sé, Alan Brogan and Joe Brolly.
Hey.
And a reminder that I know you've been furiously filling out your questions. We have 2 pairs of tickets to give away throughout the show for the 2 best questions that are read out. So we have that to look forward to. And I guess, Alan, you know, it's the end of the decade. We're finishing it with a blockbuster clash, Dublin versus Kerry. And if I'd gone to you at the start of the decade when Dublin hadn't been even in an All-Ireland final since 1995 and said, you know, 10 years' time, you'll have a couple of medals in your back pocket and the Dubs will be going for a 5 in a row, what would you have said?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have believed you, to be honest with you. But look, I suppose for us it's been a great 9 or 10 years. Dublin have managed to put 6 All-Irelands on the board since we won that one in 2011, and like I suppose it started off in 2011 just trying to get across the line, and once we did that, obviously had a poor enough year in 2012. But since Jim has come in fairness to him, he's done a fantastic job, and he's put together some team who'll hopefully go out and win a 5 in a row tomorrow. Yeah,
Tomás, in 2011, you guys let Dublin in the door. You were kind enough to even hand Stephen Cluxton the ball afterwards to really, you know, seal it as well. You know, do you look back on that game and think if you guys had got on the right side of the result, it could have maybe stopped this kind of tsunami that's come since?
I don't think you'd stop the tsunami. I think it was going to come, and I think those players were for them in 2011. I think it was about crossing the line, and once they got over the line, they knew how to win, and they gained so much confidence from it. I suppose, you know, it was difficult because we were coming to the kind of end, and we were 4 points up, 7 or 6 minutes to go, or whatever it was, and I suppose it was a sign of the times for us. We should have closed out that game in my head, and you know, you look back through the years and you say, was there any All-Ireland? I think that one was one we should have closed out. It was mistakes to let them back. Now, at the same time, they went and they won it, and McManaman's goal turned the tide. We were still a point up, but it was an absolute wave, and it felt like we were actually losing the game because the crowd went mental, and they started winning breaking ball. They tagged on the next score. I think Nolan kicked a bomb of a point. And it was kind of the beginning, the end for our team, because a lot of them fell off after the next couple of years. A lot of guys retired, but it was the start of Dublin, and I suppose the strength of them now is the fact that they can actually add on, and there's only about, I don't know, is it 3 or 4 of that team going to start on Sunday, and maybe about 7 of the team that started the 4 in a row. So Dublin have kicked on from that, certainly, but Kerry will still be there. You know, they're there with a fighting chance tomorrow.
Yeah, and as I said to Alan at the start of the decade, it would have been hard to envisage what would unfold. Like, from your perspective, you know, the battles you had in the noughties, you know, Kerry were always on top. They won 4, I think they drew 1. It would have been hard for you to imagine after that start of the Earwigs game in 2009 just how much things would change.
Well, even in 2009, we would have been seen as total underdogs. There was we weren't given a chance. We should have been beaten by Sligo and Tralee. We got out with it was a saved penalty at the end of it that Dermot Murphy saved, and had that not been saved, we were out. And we couldn't figure out. We beat Antrim. Antrim, yeah. We played Antrim, Joe.
We went 4 points up, do you remember?
They did. They did. Myself and Gooch were sitting on the sideline.
Exactly, and then they brought you on.
They did, yeah.
Cardly bastard of a manager. You guys are dropped for boozing. Okay, you can come on.
They actually...
Yeah, why were you on the bench again? Refresh our memories.
Gooch got me into trouble down in Killarney. But what actually happened was there was trouble. Joe was right. We were in trouble, and Antrim starts off very well. And I said to myself, I was on the sideline, I says he's going to have to buckle now, he's going to have to bring us in, like, as if we were going to save the day. He bought the Gooch in very early. He left me another good half an hour in there.
You're going to have to up your standard of analysis if you want to stay with RT. What happened was that shortly into the second half, James Lockery scored a goal for Antrim to put them 4 points up.
Jeez, I was there, Joe. I remember it.
Vaguely by the sounds of things.
Well,
Principles, yeah.
Well, Martin, obviously covering, that era, it didn't really look likely that Dublin were going to kick on. I know a lot's made now in retrospect of the work that's been done at underage and the structures were put in place, but it was very hard to see that, immediately joining up with the senior team, around the turn of the decade.
If you take 2010, Meath put 5 goals on them in the semi-final, and that really was the turning point, I suppose, for Dublin. I mean, that was come back, and actually that All-Ireland, you could have won that All-Ireland as well, because that I think Cork beat them by a point. But the interesting thing here is also, Dublin could be going so easy now for 7 in a row. Donegal beat them in 2014. Dublin were 5 points up in the first half, had 2 goal chances. They could have been 11 points up, and if they had, they'd now be probably in the 7. And people say if they had won that, they mightn't have won some of the other. I don't think so. I think that was.
But they kind of rejigged their style, bringing a more defensive element to it, perhaps, guarding their goal.
Yeah, but they were caught a little bit cold. It seemed to me they were 5 points up and could have had 2 goals, and they changed a bit. But they brought a lot of good new players come in as well, which I think added it on. I mean, Brian Fenty came in 2015, who's made a massive difference. But it could so easily be going for 7 in a row.
Yeah, Joe, the regeneration of the team by Jim is probably one of his biggest achievements. There's been a couple of players added along the way.
I disagree with that.
Okay. That it hasn't been regenerated, or that it's not his biggest achievement? You hadn't disagreed in a while, so you just have to get it off your chest.
I was in Trinity with Pat Kilroy, and Pat was quite shy when he was in Trinity. And, although he came from a sort of a footballing dynasty and all that, he was a Vincent's man and a Dublin man. He was quite shy. When he took the Dublin team in 2009, the team was still sort of in control. And after 2009, that disaster, we met over in Cavan, as you see, for drink. And I said, you boys will be winning O'Byrne Cups for the next 6 years. If this continues to be the culture of individualism and, kissing the badge and all of that. And that was the big thing that Patrick did, was because, as you know, he's a very serious, very, very serious individual himself, was he changed the culture. He moved out players who were, he put Bernard on the bench for 4 league games, sat him on the bench, Bernard Brogan, who'd almost been the player of the year in 2000, he sat him on the bench for 4 league games. And then in 2010, after they'd shipped the 5 goals from Meath, Diarmuid Connolly, as I recall, didn't turn up for the training session that he'd called for the Monday, and he dropped him. Diarmuid Connolly, his own teammate. And there was a huge change from there. And I've got to say, I disagree with Tomás about that 2011 team, because you watched that game. You
disagreed with me and was told an anecdote completely unrelated to what I'd asked you.
But I'm here to answer your questions.
Have at it.
What is this? Is this an interrogation in Castlereagh?
No, go for it.
Jesus, typical Free Stater. Where were you guys during the war? Honestly. But let me come back to it. After those 5 goals, and he had dropped Diarmuid Connolly, the culture was the important thing. These guys, not widely known. They had a sleep out for the homeless. They started serving at Brother Kevin's soup kitchen on a Thursday night, through the night in rotation. It became real. Not about winning medals or about All-Irelands. And Ger Brennan said it brilliantly once. He said, when we won that All-Ireland in 2011, it was only the icing on the cake. That's all it was. And I disagree with Tomás, because you look at the last quarter of that match in 2011. Dublin out-tackled them 25 tackles to 2. Dublin looked like the dominant team. If you'd taken the scoreline away at that point in time, Dublin looked like the dominant team. And the way that Dublin calmly, with composure, concentrated on that game in the last 15 minutes and put them away very calmly, it was about the culture. It was what was underlying it. Boys like Michael Darren Macaulay and that, boys who are to this day linked into their community, where it became selflessness. It's not about me, it's something bigger than me. And you see that now. They go out, they concentrate, they're clear-sighted. They don't struggle with underdogs, because they pay them the maximum respect. They're playing the game with the maximum respect. And for me, Jim Gavin took over a team where the culture was right, and has enhanced that culture. And you see that with the group. The group's completely unselfish. They're not playing for glory. They'd be embarrassed if you said they were heroes or legends. All that stuff that has bedeviled Mayo, for example. Your legends, your heroes, all that nonsense. It's Nothing to do with that.
But just
That's a distraction.
Just
from
on the
game.
question, Alan, that Joe kind of raises there, the point Joe raised about the changing of the culture. Like, as someone who was between two eras, the Pillar Caffrey era and then under Pat Gilroy, like, what do you make of it when people say, "Oh, the culture was all wrong. It was terrible, and it had to be completely changed"? Like, from someone who was there.
Yeah, I think it's easy to look back now and talk like that. Like when Pillow was in charge, you have to remember he came in. We hadn't won a Leinster in 2 years. We won one Leinster in 2002 between '95 and 2005. So one Leinster in 10 years, whatever it was. So we were at an all-time low. And Pillar, in fairness, came in. He steadied the ship. We won 4 Leinsters in a row. Back then, a Leinster was bigger than what it is now because the competition was contested more strongly than it was
2 days in the Sunset House afterwards.
than it is now. Maybe, yeah, there was a bit of that going on, all right. But I think the culture all around in GA has changed a little bit. That probably isn't going on anywhere. But like in fairness to Pat, he had a very good way of teaching a lesson, and Joe is right. He did change the culture, but I think all the stuff that went on in the Pillars era, we were desperate to do anything to try and get across the line, and we were getting hammered by Kerry, we were getting hammered by Tyrone, getting hammered by Armagh, big games. So we were willing to try anything at that stage to try and get it across the line. But in fairness to Paddy, came in, he had a great way of teaching lessons, like, and just referring to Bernard, what Joe was talking about there. I remember being in the meeting room at the start as Pat was starting to change the culture of the team and talk about attackers defending a lot more, and he says to there was 5 or 6 of us there, and he says, "Lads, how do you think we should defend?" And we say, "We should defend like this." And Pat says, "Bernard, what do you think?" Like, Bernard, I think that maybe we should leave you up top on your own, let you save your energy, and the other 5 lads do all the work around you, so when they get the ball back, they can get it to you, and you can be fresh." And Bernard was like, that's a good idea, yeah. And Pat was like, "Bernard, that won't be happening."
You're dropped.
So in a way, he was like, Paddy was serious about it, but a lot of the lessons he taught in a very kind of witty, sarcastic kind of way, which the players really related to.
Just on the 2011 final, obviously, Alan, it came down to Stephen Cluxton and that kick. Everyone has talked about it, his constant practice and that. Is it a case where you switch off nearly almost and you know the ball is going over the bar before he's taking that free?
I think for him at that stage, like he'd been hitting the frees for a year or two before that, and he was in. Like, I've seen him on the field, and everyone, look, it's been said a million times, he's there an hour before training, he's the last man leaving, and that's genuinely the truth. But he's not out actually practicing kickouts. Like, he goes out, he likes practicing penalties, or he likes practicing frees from 55 yards out. But that particular spot, if I was to pick one spot on the field where I thought he'd nail a free from, it'd be in around where that free landed. So there was probably a little bit of a stroke of luck that was right in his sweet spot as well. But I knew when it was funny again. You see, Bernard had the ball in his hands, and he had been hitting the frees. I'd say
he called for him straight away.
I'd say he took a look at the post, said, "I'm a little outside my range here," and he gave Stephen the nod. But look, it was a great kick. But under the pressure he was under, it was a fantastic kick.
And was that like a release valve for you? Like, just that you got over the line? Did you feel like on top of the world almost then? As in, you just needed to get across the line for it to happen again and again and again?
I don't think it was like that at all. I think anything that happened for me after was a bonus after 2011, to be honest with you, because so much of us, like, there was maybe 13 or 14 of us had nearly been there since 2002. So for me, even though there was a huge sense of elation and we'd finally managed to win in All-Ireland, and I could start going down to the stole again and not have to hide my head in my jacket, I think the sense of relief, like, on top of the sense of elation, there was more relief than that we just finally managed to win in All-Ireland.
Derek just said to me once, he was getting into a debate in Killarney, some of the team, Bomber and all those boys, you see about something that had happened in the game, and somebody says to him, "Go on, you, we are 2 All-Irelands."
You don't have the right to speak.
Yeah, Tomás, so what's the last decade been like for Kerry then? Like, at the moment they have the 1 All-Ireland, they had one in the 90s as well, and it was kind of held up as the barn years in Kerry. Like, what's it been like watching Dublin in particular dominate, while traditionally where Kerry will be in that position?
Well, I think, look, it is difficult. People say, Kerry went for a 5 in a row in 1933, and they lost to Cavan above in Breheny Park. I don't know how the All-Ireland semi-final was played above in Breheny Park, but it was. But they lost to Cavan. And then, obviously, famously in 1982, and any Kerry person who has any remote interest in football that says, sure, it wouldn't bother us that much now if the Dubs won, it would bother them, you know, and it is, no, I'm being serious about that, because they'd be so passionate about football and the history of it and everything down there. They love it, and this Dublin team have come on, and I suppose Kerry have struggled. And they've had good minor teams and everything, but it takes a lot more than the players itself to make a winning team. And a lot of people are saying, oh, this Kerry team will be around for a long time. And if they're managed properly and if they have the right attitude and everything, I think they might be around. But it'll be another question is whether they can compete with the Dublin side that are there, because they have evolved and they have gone on forward. But yeah, I think, look, watching Dublin going so well and us not going so well, and people say, look, you won a lot of medals. We lost an awful lot as well. Like Kerry have won 37, they've lost 22 finals, so they've been there an awful amount of times. And people say, geez, you 5 medals, and I would look at it and say, I don't really remember that, but I would remember the days we lost, the 2011s and the 2002s. We lost an awful amount, and I know you're all feeling sorry for us right now. But what I'm saying basically is their time has come and they are doing it right. And Kerry can't be complaining about what's
Stephen
happening.
O'Neill from Tyrone said to me a couple of weeks ago, he said, you know, in fairness, you had a good year in Division 4.
Well, Kieran Whelan, to be fair, was on the right. I remember the first year that I retired after it was 19. I retired in 2013, and Kieran Whelan, Dublin won in 95, and Kieran Whelan began his career as a Dublin footballer in 1996. And then I think he retired, and if I'm right, in 2010. So the year before he came in, they won an All-Ireland, and the year he left, the year after, they won an All-Ireland. And I was watching I was inside North watching the 2014, and Kerry obviously surprised a lot of people by winning the All-Ireland against Donegal. And I was just watching, and we were inside in the studio that night late, and I wasn't conscious of Kieran or anything, and I was just looking, and I was thinking aloud basically, and I says, Jesus, if I stayed on for another year, I would have got another medal, like. And Whelan looked at me and said, you're some fucking...
And Martin, obviously this is going to be your 100th All-Ireland final that you'll have attended, you know, some record, isn't it? And the biggest one you've probably been at was the one in 1982 when Seamus Darby scored that goal. You know, looking back now, was there any similarities in the build-up that you've noticed now, or is it completely different?
No, there's absolutely no similarity. But just before I come to that, it's interesting, Joe saying that criticising Dublin and the badge kissing and the whole lot. I mean, the greatest badge kisser of them all. Sorry, Joe. I was there. I was there the day he made his debut for Derry.
That was after I won the All-Ireland.
Which, by the way, he would never have won All-Ireland. He never thanked Kildare enough for winning the All-Ireland. Larry Tompkins missed the 1993 All-Ireland with a damaged knee. They had the referee was from Kildare, Tommy Howard. He sent Tony Davis off. You never thank Kildare enough for that one. But I was there the day he made his debut.
Martin, you've always been anti-Northern.
I was there the day he made his debut.
In all of your writings and all of your bias, you've always been anti-Northern.
In 1990, I think it was 1992, you made your debut against Fermanagh, I think, in the Ulster Championship.
No.
Yes, you did. You came on as a sub. Yes, you did. You came on as a sub.
No.
And this is true. I'm walking out afterwards. I was covering that game.
This is completely wrong.
Sorry. And someone said to me,
he's getting old.
Did you see that young Brolly come on? And so, this was a Derry man says, he's a right pup. I wasn't there. How prophetic a show, and he still is.
I never played against Fermanagh in the championship, but apart from that.
Well,
in 1990.
If you think Martin speaking frankly now, the other day he said that Derry team are one of the worst teams to ever win the All-Ireland. He hasn't said that to Joe tonight, so I thought I'd just...
I think, as I recall, and this is not a joke, I think that I recall Martin writing the morning after that All-Ireland final that this Derry team was set to dominate Gaelic football for the next decade.
That's more fake news. I did not write that. But in answer to your question, in 1982, I mean, obviously the build-up was completely different. Media was allowed access to players and all. It was a different time, but the coverage wasn't anything like it is now, so it's completely different. Also, and I think this is I suppose in Kerry at the time, there was a lot of expectation in terms of 5 in a row shirts and all this type of thing, which there's none of that around Dublin. I have to say it's been kept very, maybe it's easier controlled in Dublin, but it wasn't anything like it was. Kerry were it was gone mad, it gone out of control, I suppose, a little bit.
Before we started, we were thinking, what's the best way to get Martin and Joe going head to head at some stage? Thankfully, they just did our job for us. We didn't have to do anything at all.
It's probably a good time to take our first question.
Sean O'Neill, one of the greatest Gaelic footballers, and who made the breakthrough really with the great Down team in the 60s to win 3 All-Irelands. And Sean O'Neill was famously said to the Queen's team when they came across the border, when he was managing them, to play a Sigerson game, he said, "Look out, boys, look out. They're the bastards that deserted us in 1921. He was referring to you, Martin. Amongst others. Tyrone were really dirty against Kerry, they tackled them and stuff. It's a wee bit unfair tackling them like that,
On that note, our first question, probably good timing as well. Fiona Mulligan, Joe, do you whinge as much in real life as you do on the telly? Stand up, Fiona.
It's Fiona from Tyrone.
Could be.
There you is the
Are you
back.
from Tyrone, Fiona? Are you one of the Mulligans?
Have we an answer, Joe?
Yeah. Well, I think that there aren't enough complainers. There are too many acceptors. I mean, you cut teachers' salaries in France and they burn down the Ministry of Education. You have 10 years of austerity here and everybody says, "Oh, that's fine." "Oh yeah, that's fine." There aren't enough complainers, and there aren't enough people who talk straight in society. And football punditry, for example. I mean, we're only talking about Gaelic football. And yet, people so rarely say what they mean. And if you do say what you mean, people go, "Wow, that's unbelievable." I mean, I said basically, look, it's a disgrace what's happening to Gaelic football whenever Tyrone were systematically pulling people down, And I mean, it was a national event. Dave Hickey rang me and he said there's just been a standing ovation at a bar in Killarney. I just said, Mickey Hart encourages a corrupt culture on the field, and it's corrosive for Gaelic games, and it's going to take hold, and we're all going to start saying, well, he's only taking one for the team. He's doing what's required. So if there's any point in football punditry, which is doubtful, because you guys know as much about football as I do, is that you speak your mind. Surely, no?
Well, we might get a few of you doing that now. This one is from Helen Nolan for Alan Brogan and the rest of the panel. Alan, do you think it's unfair that Diarmuid Connolly's come in so late in the day and, been given so much game time, especially with your brother Bernard?
Turn off those cameras. I thought it was a strange move from Jim. It wouldn't be. I was just saying to Joe beforehand. It's like when you look at it from the outside, it goes against the sort of stuff that he preached about commitment and that sort of stuff. But in saying that Diarmuid is a special talent, there's no doubt about it. And I don't know. In a way, maybe Jim has looked at the games this year. He's always placed huge emphasis on his bench and his 5 or 6 coming off the bench. In fact, he probably places more emphasis in the lead up to a game on the 8 or 9 guys on the bench than he does in the 15 that are starting. And I'd say he felt that he hasn't got enough off his bench over the course of the championship this year. And maybe coming into the All-Ireland series, I think he's felt I need a couple of subs here. If I bring Diarmuid back, he's a real option. He's a real option for me off the bench if we are in trouble in the game. And I think that's the reason for it. But it does go against a lot of the stuff that he's spoken about before. But I think Diarmuid is a special talent, and he's been around the group for a long time as well. So it's not like somebody coming back in from the outside. And look, I don't ask Bernard about what goes on inside, because he's obviously not allowed to tell me. So I wouldn't put him in that position. Because I never said anything that was going on inside to anybody when I was playing, so I wouldn't ask him. But I thought it was a strange decision at the time. Whether it pays off or not, I suppose we'll find out.
So you're saying Bernard is in the squad, if I'm reading you right?
I honestly, did I say that? No, I haven't a clue. I wouldn't ask him. I honestly wouldn't ask him. Guys just don't talk outside the camp, so I wouldn't put him in that position.
Can I just ask even Tomás, and I'll ask you as well, and how would you have taken that as a player in that situation if there was someone coming in, possibly taking your spot, coming in fairly late in the day?
It never happened, no, Michael. No, I think it has to be hard. Like, you have to look at it from 2 points of view. You're looking at it from Jim Gavin and Dublin, who are going for 5 in a row, and you'll do anything to go for the 5 in a row. You'll do anything to win the All-Ireland or whatever. And then you're looking at it from players who have I suppose committed to Dublin for so long and feel and rightly feel that there's a competitive edge inside there. It's what drives a team is a competitive edge, and there has to be guys inside in training not happy with not starting, not happy with not making the bench, and that's really healthy. And then when you have a guy who wanted to go to America, and the one thing I would say for Jim is the door was always open. He always said it. Every time he was asked, he never batted away. He said the door is open for the best players in Dublin to be a part of the panel. And he obviously saw Connolly as one of the best players, and I think it was the right decision because I actually think Connolly will play a major role tomorrow. I think he'll get 20-25 minutes, and I think in a game that will be tight, and you'll see it tomorrow, the best players perform on the right days. And they talk about all-stars and all this, and it is in the white heat where you're there in an All-Ireland final, that's when you know if there's stuff in a fella, and I think there is in Connolly. And is Jim Gavin going to say it's worth whatever lads? There will be lads, I've no doubt there's 7 or 8 lads inside the Dublin team discussed it, but it's the team, and the attitude they have is everything is for the team. You have to take it on the chin, but there will be somebody. I mean, if Connolly is sitting tomorrow, obviously there's somebody that was there all year that wasn't. So but Dublin going for 5 in a row, Connolly is there because he's one of the best players that they have.
I think Tomás as well is it only becomes an issue if Dublin lose. I think if they win, they won't even ever be discussed again. But if they lose, then questions will be asked, or maybe even within the panel. But if they
depends on his performance when he comes in.
I don't think they care whether questions are asked or not. The culture is that this is not about the media. They don't care about the media.
Well, I'm not talking about the media, Joe. I'm just saying within the panel.
No, but that's what you're saying. The questions will be asked. You'll put a question in the paper, and that's fine. That's what the media does. It's a different job. But
the players,
Joe, will within the squad, will they raise it? I wonder.
You were talking about the Dublin culture earlier. Like this goes against everything that Jim has previously preached.
But
is that right?
The point he's making is if
why-
Connolly comes on.
But why was he brought back into the panel? Do you know what the reason for that is?
I don't, but he was about to go to America. If it wasn't for a visa issue, he'd be there.
So you know that that's correct?
The visa issue?
Yeah, but you know that's why he didn't go then. You know how it all transpired.
I have a good idea.
I don't think that would stand up in court, I have to say. I look at it in a different way. I think it seems to me that Diarmuid is a troubled soul. I don't know him personally very well. I've said hello to him a few times.
And yet you're comfortable saying that.
And I think that but I do understand, that he is a troubled soul. And I think that the Dublin GA family, the sort of that whole GA family has probably decided, look, that this is best for him. I know that there are a lot of people, Pat Gilroy, Jim, people like that who care for him. And there's another dimension to that Dublin squad that isn't just about winning All Irelands. It isn't just about, that sort of talk that the media talk about, that we all talk about 5 in a row and drive for 5 and all of that. And he's clearly an extremely talented Gaelic footballer, very powerful guy, no issue when it comes to the white heat of battle. And I would have thought that what you said was probably right, that the group would be very comfortable with him because they know his abilities and he's been around the group for so long. That's it. What does it say in the Bible about the prodigal son, or the sheep that was lost has returned and all that stuff?
But if you put it back in say 2009, 2010, if we were 6 weeks out from an All-Ireland final and we thought we could bring someone in like Dermot Connolly that were going to help us in the last 2 or 3 matches, would we have bitten someone's hand off? Of course we would. Yeah. So I'd say it's the same with lads now. Even though Dublin have won 4 All-Irelands in a row, there's no doubt there's still insecurities as lads are lying at home tonight now getting ready for an All-Ireland final. Even though everyone's saying they're going to beat Kerry, there's Dublin players lying at home tonight thinking, God, have we trained hard enough? Are we really ready for this young Kerry team? There's definitely insecurities, in every team, in every sport. So I think bringing Dermot back just helps strengthen the group. And whether he uses them or not, I think from a psychological perspective, it does help strengthen the group. But as Tomás says, there's no doubt there's going to be someone's left off. There's a panel name saying someone's left off. There's 10 lads left off. Some of them might be pissed off that Dermot came back because he's taken a spot on the bench, but that's life. It's a cutthroat business.
But if he took a break and he went away, and if he hadn't taken his break, there's no doubt that he would have been playing if he was going along the way he was. Now their bench isn't having the impact it has had in previous years, and he is a guy that can improve that bench. So it's no brainer for Jim. If the group accept it, if Jim accepts it, they don't care what anybody else thinks, and he'll have an impact tomorrow, I think.
We did a thing. Rory O'Neill, from RTE, Cork man, very, very funny guy who's in the sports department in RTE. And you want to see him screaming and shouting at the television and all when Cork are playing. It's hilarious.
When
But
Kerry are playing.
He said, we were talking about clutch players, and he said, who are Dublin's clutch players? So I thought, I'll go and, look at this. And since 2011 until now, we looked at the crucial moments. This is the sort of analysis you don't get in Sky. We looked. Seriously. All right. Anyway, we went through the crucial scores, the crucial moments for that Dublin team. And from 2011 until last year's final. And amazingly, 8 different players. Clutch moments in games, the crucial times, the winning scores. 8 different Dublin players, including Owen O'Gara in, was it the 2016 replay? No, the 2015 final. Cormac Costello coming on, kicked the last 3 points, which I had forgotten, in the replay against Mayo in 2016. Kicked the last 3 points to win the game for Dublin by a point. 8 different clutch players, starting with Cluxton, going to Dean Rock, and then we included Paul Mannion's penalty last year because it changed the game. And
Was my one in 15 included in it?
there was a wee bit of the Pillar Caffrey era about that one, but the point being that there is that sense of selflessness in the group where they're fully concentrated on the game. See, it's something deeper than the way we describe it. And so one of the things I've been thinking about over the last 2 or 3 weeks when we were talking about is this cultural thing. What is the actual impact of this cultural thing, this deeper sense of, look, you're part of something bigger than you are. It's not about your ego. It's not about you celebrating or you sort of saying, look, wasn't I great or getting All-Stars? It's Dave Hickey, who's absolutely withering, one of the greatest men I've ever had the privilege to know, the transplant surgeon, the great Dublin player from the 70s, who really began the whole organ donation system in Ireland. You know what he's like. He's an incredible man. And he texted me after Dublin beat Mayo, and he said, I'll get in trouble for this, but he says, about time, Joe, he said, as always, he said, Mayo will probably get 6 All-Stars and Players of the Year and we'll win the All-Ireland. And that cultural thing, it's so important. And you look at that over the years. You bring on a Dublin substitute, Kevin McMenamin, Owen O'Gara, Cormac Costello, Dean Rock. It's something more than just a guy who's got the steel himself to take that score. It's something about trusting the whole grip. So like Dean Rock takes that free and Lee Keegan throws the computer chip at his foot. He's still putting it over the bar. The Tyrone boys trash talked Paul Mannion for a full 3 minutes before he took that penalty last year. Bing! Didn't celebrate, didn't put his hands in the air, back to his position. There's something deeper.
Well, Martin, so looking ahead in tomorrow's game to move on, there's a lot of different kind of talking points going into it. Will Tommy Wall start? Who will pick up Brian Fenton? Will Jack Barry be parachuted in even though he wasn't named in the starting team? Who will pick up the key Dublin and Kerry forwards? Like, for you, what's the key one out of kind of the talking points going into the game that you think will decide it?
Well, Fenton against I presume would be more, and if Kerry have to get that, they've got to get somebody to stop Brian Fenton, who's been such a driving force for Dublin. I don't know. Tomás will obviously have far more insight in this, but the Tommy Walsh thing I find interesting because he made such an impact the last day. If he comes on the second half and Dublin or Kerry are 4 or 5 or 6 points behind, is it too late then? I mean, would it not be a possibility of bringing him on at the start and doing perhaps what Tyrone did, and if he can't stick the pace, bring him back on again? Because the match could be over by the time Tommy gets to go at it.
I remember Tyrone playing Kerry, and Kerry put Tommy Walsh and Kieran Downey on the edge of the square, and the Tyrone boys fucking ate them. Because, and this is something that Colin Cooper said to me some years ago. I said, what's it like playing against Dublin? He says, it's weird. He says, they don't care about you at all. They completely ignore you. Doesn't matter what you do. They ignore you. and you watch the way Tyrone ate those two boys that day.
Well,
why do you think it would be any different?
Yeah, Tomás, do you think
tomorrow?
if Tommy Walsh wasn't tomorrow, do you think he would? Well, first, do you think he will start?
I wouldn't actually start him. You know, I think if you're not good enough to get to half time with the Dubs, they'd wear you out no matter what. I think, like, Tommy Walsh was thrown in at a stage of the game against Tyrone when Kerry were struggling, and up to this he hadn't played a huge part in terms of the championship that Kerry were playing. I think if he was going better in training, he would have been starting. Killian Spillane is a guy I reckon that if Tommy was at a level that he was playing at a good standard, that he would be competing with Killian, and Killian was starting ahead of him. So I do think it's a big decision, because I think there's a couple of weaknesses in this Kerry side that Dublin will possibly expose. But, you know, the other side of it is, I wouldn't start him, I think. And a lot of people I've spoken to during the week, this is the big thing with Kerry in the last 2 years. Nothing comes out of the camp anymore. Nobody says anything, so we don't actually know. Jack Barry, is he the guy because he's had my attitude with Jack Barry is, yes, he's marked him, and he's done a man-marking job on Fenton. And anybody with any decent amount of football could do a man-marking job and spoil Fenton. But I'd always seen Jack Barry as a guy at under 20 and under 21 level who attacked, kicked 2 or 3 points a game from midfield. But he sacrifices all that to mark Fenton. I think that's wrong. I mean, mark him by all means, but try to put your own stamp on the game if you can.
The league final in 2017 was won probably, though, off the back of that man-marking job.
Well, I know, they'll all throw stats at you at one point, and yes, it is. And if it is a case of just sacrificing one man for the likes of Brian Fenton, who is so key to Dublin, that's fine. But I mean, if Jack O'Shea was playing against, I don't know who, or Kieran Whelan was playing against Dublin, or we were playing against Dublin our day, Kieran Whelan and Darragh O'Shea would mark each other. We've one of the best midfielders, David Moran, and why don't they mark each other? I think that could be an issue. I think we could be guessing on who's going to mark the forwards of Dublin, who's going to mark the Kerry forwards, but till we see it, I haven't got it right once this year. And I'd worry for the Morleys, the Foleys. You know, Tom Sullivan is our one guy who I think is aggressive enough and actually speedy enough and strong enough to stay with them. I'd worry about the other ones, but yeah, I wouldn't start Tommy Walsh. I don't think. You know, I haven't seen enough of him playing good football all year. And as Joe said, I think don't be one bit that it'd be a surprise or that they don't have the players to handle it. I've never seen the Dubs struggle with big fellas, and you know, we had Donny in there for long enough. They didn't struggle with him either. You know, they will have a plan no matter if he starts or if he comes in. The Dubs, I think, will handle Tommy. And that's not saying that he can't, that he opens up Gainey and Clifford. He can, but I think people underestimate the Dubs' defence at times.
I think what Tommy Walsh has done is he seems to have taken a lot of pressure off any of the other forwards. Like, all the talk now is about Tommy Walsh, and as Joe mentioned there, like, he wasn't even playing before the last game. He hasn't featured in a few games. All of a sudden he comes on in one game, and now he's the player that's going to win Kerry the All Ireland. So I think what he'll do is he's going to attract a lot of attention when he comes in. That might free up some of the other guys. But I think it's a big ask for Kerry to think that Tomás Walsh is going to have a huge impact on this game to win it, like to win it for Kerry. And like, if we speak about Fenton as well, like if the man marked Fenton, someone's going to have to man mark Jack McCaffrey. There's 4 forwards being man marked. I think if Kerry go with that approach where they're trying to isolate guys and take them out of the game, I think that's just going to play completely into Dublin's hands.
And you man mark them, they play total team football now. It's a dummy, it's a wee pause, it's a hand pass there, it's a movement there, and then the man's he's coming off your shoulder, they're screening each other off, they're dummying, and they've refined their game plan so much. Yeah, that it's like, you know, it's water
Alan,
in your hands.
we were asking you earlier, would you like to play in this current system where it is kind of, as Joe mentioned, it's a lot different to even when you retired?
I'd like to play now because you win a few more medals. but no, I wouldn't. Like, I enjoyed, it's funny you talk about when you win the medals, when we didn't win the medals. Like, I enjoy playing under Pillar as much as I enjoy playing under Pat or under the few years I played under Jim Gavin. Like, I don't have any, I don't look back, obviously remember the medals, but they're not the days I'd pick out. The days I'd pick out are maybe a couple of the Leinster final against Laois, obviously 2011, like the loss against Mayo in 06. But in terms of the way football is played, I'd rather play then. There was a lot more kick pass, and you get one-on-one with your man as a corner forward a lot more than you do now. And I think I would rather play in the noughties as opposed to the way the game is played now.
We've kind of built Dublin up there as almost unbeatable. Martin, how do Kerry go about winning this game?
Well, there's one point I think that has been overlooked in all of this, and it's the indefinable sort of thing. It's the 5 in a row factor, which could play a part here. It happened with Kilkenny in 2010 in the hurling. They conceded 4 goals. Nobody ever saw Kilkenny conceding 4 goals before that, or indeed afterwards, until they come back and won all Ireland's. And yet that 5 in a row, you wonder, did it the same with Kerry in 1982 when Mikey Sheehy, one of the greatest players who ever wore boots. He said afterwards that he felt his legs were heavy. He took a penalty. And he said, "I took the penalty the way I was playing." And you just wonder, is that 5 in a row factor? Is there something in it that we won't know until tomorrow?
I think so.
It's interesting because at the moment Dublin have handled all their obstacles, very business-like. They don't seem to get
5 in a row. Yes, that's the point. Yeah, that's the question.
Joe, do you think is there any difference?
Joe, you disagree?
I do disagree totally with that, because I think again it comes back to that thing. I mean, Brian Cody, for sentimental reasons, I think picked Shefflin that day when his cruciate was gone. Shouldn't have picked him. Jim Gavin would never pick somebody in that situation. It just wouldn't happen. Fine, Jack McCaffrey, you're out. That's fine. There's no problem.
But Joe,
we'll bring on somebody else. We'll work through it. It's an entirely collective thing. And I think that
they were still level halfway through the second half and conceded 3 goals.
I don't think that the group themselves are interested in this idea of 5 in a row. I don't think that it's anything that's real for them. And that shows itself in the fact that they go out against an underdog and they demolish them. They're not treating them with any disrespect. They're playing the game. Oisin McConville said to me once after they'd won, I think it was their 6th or 7th Ulster club title. I said to him, in their 4th All Ireland, or was it 5? Was it 5, Martin? They won 5 All Ireland club titles. I said to him, why are you still playing? 5 All Ireland club titles. What is it that keeps you going? He says, we just love playing together. We want to play. It's chemistry. We want to play. And I think that's that with this Dublin team. And that's where I think that, people say, oh, Kerry have nothing to lose. I completely disagree with that. Because the thing about this Dublin team, you put yourself in the position of that Kerry team, not a team like Tomás Ó Sé, who'd won all Ireland's and who sort of knew, look, they're going to go out and they're going to play as equals. Whoever they play against, they'll play as equals. It's different with this Dublin team. What's your worst fear? Our worst fear is looking bad in public, being humiliated. And that young Kerry team, a lot of them going out there thinking, fuck, it wouldn't be human if they weren't thinking in the back of their minds, Christ, if these boys starting us. And it's not that they can go out there and just play with freedom. And I don't think they will go out there and play with freedom. I think that they are bound to think in the back of their minds, this could be a fucking disaster. I'm not saying that, but they wouldn't be human if that wasn't there. And that's what this Dublin team does to you. And they're a bit like Kilkenny with Shefflin and all those boys. They can score like a hurling team. I mean, Tyrone were 4 points up against them last year. It was 5-1. They're like fucking 5 minutes later. What the fuck? They're fucking 6 points behind. Mayo were beaten them by 3 points at half time, and everybody's going, oh, this is Mayo's. Oh, absolutely, this is Mayo's. Oh, like fucking 7 minutes later, they go, what? He went, is this true? He went to the toilet at half time. He went to the toilet, he came out and he says, what the fuck? Is that true or false?
You've said it a few times now. We're talking about the 5 in a row, and the one thing all the lads said in Kerry at the time, and Kerry is even to this day is just insane on football, and I lived in Cork for years, and I loved living in Cork because Cork were never involved in the Ireland final, and but you could walk around the place and nobody would ask you a question, and it's taxing on the head, like it's taxing talking about football all the time and discussing, will you do this and what will you do with your man, and you're there and you meet 20 people in Kerry and they'll ask you the exact same question. Whereas in Dublin, and Alan would know this, yes, there's an amount of GA people in Dublin, a huge amount. But geez, there's not 1.8 or 1.9 million of them or whatever. You can walk through the street without getting asked every second. We had fellas working in the bank, and every second farmer in the door. Well, if it wasn't tickets, it was how you were doing Sunday. And I think it's different. The build-up is different in a place where football, everybody.
Yeah, Alan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, to a certain extent, but you're still at. But this team, and even the teams that I would have played on under Pat and stuff, like they've gone through, they role-played these scenarios out there when you're stopping the street and you're asked this question. They know the answer to if you're asked about tickets, if you're asked who's playing Sunday, it's Bernard in the squad. It's like I describe like one of those toys, not those toys where you pull the string on the back and it just spells something out, and then you just change the subject and something thing. And that's the level of detail that any top-class manager is going to now preparing guys in that way. And I don't think it's an issue for them. It can be draining, but I think guys just go underground for the last 10 days. Most of them are in college or whatever anyway, or they're maybe teachers that gone back to school the last few days. So they're leading very low profile lives over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we might do a few more questions, Michael. Jill.
Yeah, I'll take one. This is for Martin, but I'd ask all the lads here. It's from Harry Carpendale, I think is his name. Given the number of All-Irelands you've attended, Martin, what is the best individual performance you have seen throughout all those All-Irelands? And I'll fire that to start with Martin. I'll fire through all the lads then.
The best individual performance. Well, there's been obviously quite a lot of them, but I suppose Peter Canavan in 2003 would have been one of them. I mean, there's so many. I mean, it's a very difficult question off the top. There's Goose. There was Tomás Ó Sé several times. Joe Brolly in 1993.
You couldn't be talking about 2003 because that the day he was injured. Remember, he just kicked the freeze.
Yeah.
No, you're thinking of You're not.
The one he.
No. You're thinking of 1995 against Dublin when he scored 11 points and Tyrone only scored 12.
Freezer, weren't they? Yeah, they were.
But he was brilliant. Like in fairness,
The best I saw was Maurice Fitz in '97. I thought it was. No, it helped him that Pat Holmes and Martin and Pat. In fairness, they gave him. Mortimer was on the other side. It was the best performance. The kicks. I don't care if you're out there on your own with no one marking you. Where he kicked left, right.
He's lovely.
It was the best. It was the best performance I saw.
Going back many years, I mean, Jimmy Barry Murphy was 1973. Yeah. I mean, it was his first day in his first year, and
19 years old.
He's like George Best.
Yeah.
Teenager.
Cork had such a great reputation until Donald Oak destroyed it.
that was
That's true. I stand over that comment. I'm happy for that to be published.
And they say, that Kerry ran Jimmy Barry Murphy out of football because they were dragging and pulling him for years.
Why, Jimmy Dina?
Yeah, Jimmy. Well, several of them.
He's still got his testicles in his freezer. I think I'll just stick to the hurling, lads.
Alan, your best individual performance you've seen in the final?
I suppose from a selfish perspective, Bernard's 2-3 against Mayo in 13, was it?
13. Yeah. Palming the ball into the net.
Yeah.
Like, come on, seriously.
2-3 in an All-Ireland final.
I know, but palming them into the net. It was like the bomber throwing them into the net, do you remember?
They were the ones we didn't get for many years.
I know that too, yeah.
Joe, your own personal highlight, individual performance? Not your own.
Seriously, honestly, my abilities are overestimated. But probably the greatest forward performance that I saw in an All-Ireland final was the down front six against Meath that day. I mean, they were brilliant forward line. They were so hard to play against. They were so powerful, Individual performances, so many. I mean, the bomber. Listen, I mean, he was unmarkable. I think he scored. It was 3-2 he scored in his first final. 3-2 from play, not bad. 19 years of age,
The same record as Fenton has now. I mean, they were going for he hadn't lost the championship match when they were going for the 5-0 in '82.
Is that right?
Yeah, but the comparison stopped there.
Yeah.
I'm only messing.
Yes. And I mean, people don't mean the bomber for his size. Because I remember the day that Monaghan had them in serious trouble in the All-Ireland semi-final. And they should have beaten them the first day. And in the replay, it was the bomber. Edge of the square. They just bombed the ball into him high. And he dismantled them that day. And it was an excellent Monaghan team. He was the go-to guy. And he changed Kerry's fortunes. Because that Kerry team was all there apart from him whenever Dublin beat them in 76 and 77. And then 78, the bomber was there. And then that was... Because, I mean, apart from anything else, not only was he 6'4", 16 stone, he was 2-footed. He scored with both feet. I mean, he was basically unmarkable.
There's one here for you, Joe, and it's slightly off topic, but is Joe Brolly happy at the prospect of Rory Gallagher becoming the Derry manager?
Is he? Yeah. Derry have got a Tyrone director of football, Brian McIver. This is true. Our under-17s this year were managed by Donegal man. Our under-20s were managed by a Tyrone man. And I said this 4 or 5 years ago, that there was a Tyrone conspiracy to destroy Derry Gaelic football for a generation. Rory Gallagher coming to Derry. Johnny McBride, a proud son of Derry, who won an All-Ireland minor title with Derry and All-Ireland under-21. Fantastic fella. He went for the job. Great club man around Derry. And he was told, no, there's no point in applying for it. This is Rory Gallagher's like, Rory Gallagher, what the fuck? I mean, seriously. Pass it back, pass it back, pass it back, pass it back, give it back to the keeper. Oh, Jesus, don't kick it, don't kick it, don't kick it. Don't fucking kick it. You fucking... The only good thing I can say about Rory Gallagher, honestly, and I mean this with respect and affection for Rory, is that he forced Arlene Foster to sit through a fucking Ulster final.
How do you follow that?
Hey, calm down. Honestly.
We take one more, just fly through the lads here as well, actually. We'll start with you, Joe, and I want it in a sentence or less, please. Who would you consider the best footballer never to win All-Ireland?
Oh, fuck, seriously? Mars, fucking sponsorship.
Joe?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, obviously, there have been so many very, very, very fine footballers who've not won an All-Ireland. I mean, recently, Lee Keegan, like, who wouldn't want Lee Keegan on their team? No, seriously.
No love for Lee Keegan.
Mayo's problem was they only had one Lee Keegan. Not only did he mark Diarmuid Connolly out of an All-Ireland final, he outscored him. He did the same with Sean Kavanagh. I mean, what a Gaelic footballer. In fairness, if any of those Mayo players were entitled to think that they'd done everything that was required to win an All-Ireland, it would be Lee Keegan. Who else I can think of?
Sorry,
There's a load of great players. Enda Muldoon from Derry, what an artist he was. Won an All-Ireland club title with Ballinderry. He could catch a ball one-handed, either hand, like that. And he was completely two-footed. What an artist he was. Played in 2 All-Ireland semi-finals. Just the teams weren't that strong that he played on. What a fabulous Gaelic footballer he was too, But I mean, there have been so many of them. I mean, All-Irelands, as my father once said, are for Kilkenny and Kerry. Now, the new generation, now it's supposed to Tipperary and Dublin. Yeah. The Bomber Liston said, I remember this well, before you boys played the 2011 final. There was another thing on in News Talk, and I was in it, and I was so proud. Oh my God, the Bomber Liston and Jack were saying all those boys, you see. And Jack were like Captain America, the fucking granite jaw and you see. And anyway, the Bomber was asked about, by the News Talk boy, he said, what about the game today? Do you think Dublin can win? He says, well, he said the last time, Dublin beat Kerry in Croke Park, Elvis was still alive. Well, the shoe's on the other foot now, boys. Yeah.
That's not true. That's not true, by the way.
Don't spoil the fucking joke. Was he when, what?
My Kerry wife was saying that to me for 25 years until 2011. And I was telling fellas driving him in the taxi, and an old guy said to me one night in the taxi, well, he said, it's not true. And I looked up the dates, and he's right. He said, look at it, he was dead a week.
Give that man the All-Ireland tickets.
I was going to say, give that man the tickets.
Give him one of them. Well done.
I'm not finished. He said, I remember it well, he said, there was a dub up in the stand with a big banner saying, Elvis is gone, but the dubs live on.
So, finally, Alan. I can't even remember what the question was, but...
The best player never to win an All-Ireland. From a Dublin perspective, you'd have to say Kieran Whelan. He was such a brilliant player to play with, and he was the leader of that team for so long. And it's a one regret. Obviously, I don't have many regrets, but one regret is that under Pillar we didn't manage to reach an All-Ireland final, and that Kieran Whelan didn't manage to win an All-Ireland with us at some stage. Outside of Dublin, guys that would have marked myself, Sean Marty Lockhart from Derry was Sean Marty Lockhart never won All-Ireland.
He never, what a player.
He was the best cornerback I ever marked when I was playing. Obviously never won All-Ireland.
That's what Peter Canavan said. He said, I couldn't,
bad
enough that Kieran McKeever was born at the same time as I was, but then fucking Sean Marty Lockhart came along.
Tomás?
Look, a lot of counties, Gary Brennan, Declan Brown, Conor McManus, you could go through an awful amount of counties, and all so-called weak counties would always have some player, Matty Ford down in Wexford. You could go through an awful list of them. I don't know who the best.
I was going to say, is there any good Kerry players who haven't won an All-Ireland?
Jeez, I was trying to think there.
David Clifford.
Give him a couple of years.
David Clifford.
There's one going back a little bit. I think Dermot Hurley would have been definitely in that. I think Glenn Ryan of Kildare would have been another who would. But if you were to name one, certainly for me, it would be Dermot Hurley. Yeah, and going back a bit longer, Mick Cairn, just Sligo, people like that who were really top notch.
Tell him, Martin, tell him the story about Dermot's last game in the Connacht Championship. What happened afterwards?
I don't know, Joe. You tell him.
I thought you'd been to 100 All-Ireland finals.
Yeah, that was the Connacht final. I was covering the Ulster final. I wasn't a good order at the time in the press of the Ulster final. Punished me.
It was against Mayo, and it was the Connacht semi-final, and it had been made known beforehand that this was Dermot's last game for Roscommon. And his nickname, I think, was Superman then, and he was a fabulous footballer and a fabulous looking fella and all the rest of it. And anyway, Mayo beat them, and at the end of the game, the Mayo players put him on their shoulder and carried him off the field to a standing ovation. Isn't that true?
I don't know, I wasn't there. But it would. I heard that.
That's absolutely true. I think you can get it. You can see it on YouTube.
We're going to get our All-Ireland final predictions before we wrap up. But first, it's time to give away those 2 pairs of tickets. The moment everyone's been waiting for. Yeah, Elvis over here thinks he's in with a good chance.
Jesus, give him the tickets. Seriously, don't.
I think the first one, the person who asked about Joe Brolly's whinging, I think was probably
Fiona Mulligan is getting
a good candidate. So congratulations, Fiona. You can collect them afterwards.
Anti-northern bias of the southern media. I object to that.
And Michael, do you want to pick?
I'd go with Harry Carpendale as well. Yeah.
Congratulations. You can pick those tickets up after the show.
I can't fucking believe it.
And Martin, we'll start with you and go across. So what's your final prediction for the game?
In the Irish Independent pre-championship magazine last May, I went for Kerry to win the All-Ireland. The reason being at the time that I'd looked at all the other previews and everybody else had said Dublin, so I wanted to have one looking a bit different. 5 months on, I'm afraid I have to change my mind because if you can see 310 to Cork, 120 to Donegal, 18 points against Tyrone, I think it has to be Dublin. I can't see them holding I can't see Kerry holding that forward line, so it's Dublin.
Tomás?
Yeah, I think Billy Keane is the only man I've seen tip Kerry all week. The races are out there. I don't know, are they gone or are they coming or whatever this goal is. No, look, I think if you look at it just from a conceding and a scoring, the Dubs have scored 10 goals more than Kerry have scored in this championship alone. I think, but it's the defensive side. It's the defensive side that I worry about, because I think Kerry have to guarantee most possession, and because of Cluxton, I don't think they'll have most possession, and I also think that they'll go after Shane Ryan. And it will come down to the most possession, and it will come down to the most opportunities. And the Dubs, I think, if they have enough of it, I think they'll beat Kerry. But I do think that Kerry will push them. I don't think this will be a walkover. I do think that Kerry will push them. And you know what? If it does come, if Kerry are there with 3 or 4 minutes, geez, anything could happen, because I do think they have the forwards to hurt them. But I don't think they'll be there with 3 or 4 minutes to go, to be honest. So I'd say Dubs by 4 or 5.
Body blow to the Kerry people in the crowd, I feel sorry for them. Alan?
I think first thing to say is that it is the dream final, both for Dublin and Kerry, going for the 5 in a row, and a chance for Kerry to write themselves into the history books. Similarly to Tomás, there's 2 exceptional sets of forwards, but I would be worried about the Kerry backs, particularly after losing Peter Crowley earlier on in the year. I just don't think they have a real leader at centre back there that can hold the centre of defence of them. And with a rookie goalkeeper in Shane Ryan in there, when Dublin squeeze, as we've seen them squeeze 12 players up and form that line across the middle and try and force turnovers and the kick-outs, they can become a lonely place for the goalkeeper out there. And I think if he loses a couple of kick-outs, it's really going to test his mettle to see can he keep Kerry in the game. I think when that happens, I think Dublin will force a few turnovers and get a few scores off that. So look, it's very difficult to look past Dublin.
Joe?
Well, I mean, Tomás says that if Kerry are there with 3 or 4 minutes to go, I disagree with that, because you free state bastard. I disagree with that.
I was working with Joe lately. Sorry for cutting across with Joe. I was working with Joe lately on live television, and he turns around to me during a break, and he says, "Jesus Christ, you're hogging the fucking analysis. Will you stop talking?"
The first time Tomás did the live television, you see, he was nervous and he came on and I was very friendly with him before. I said, "Jesus, great to see you and all that there." And I said, "Good luck. Geez, you'll be great. You know, there'll be no problem." And as soon as we went live, I elbowed him and I says, "Don't fuck this up." You could see him. And I kept elbowing him, you know, just like, "Fuck, don't tell it, Jesus." No, but I think that what we see is that in that span, except for the day they were ambushed against Donegal, when what they needed to do was drop a man back to cover. All they needed to do was to do what Dublin have done since with Cian O'Sullivan or with Philly McMahon or Cooper, just to drop into that central zone to prevent Donegal coming through the centre. Because Jim gambled quite correctly, Jimmy McGuinness, that Jim Gavin would say, "Well, we're just going to play total football. We'll play our game. We'll play it for 75 minutes. We're here to entertain, and we're here to express ourselves. So we're not going to do that. We just don't do it. It's not our principles." And I can understand that. It was a very noble decision, made for a tremendously exciting game. But apart from that game, you look at all the crunch moments in the games that they've had. 64 minutes against Mayo in 2017, they went 2 points down. Cluxton sets the ball down as if he's going to play a round of golf on a spring morning. Kicks it out to Philly McMahon. Hand passes it to Fitzsimmons. Hand passes it across. 18 passes later, it's over the bar. Mayo didn't touch the ball again until Dublin were a point ahead, apart from the keeper kicking the ball out. You know, and we see that each time they're in a pressurized situation, they're able to respond because they're very clear-sighted. They don't get distracted by that pressure. I see what Martin's saying about the 5 in a row, but I can't think of a group that's better suited to be immune from that. Because what was the phrase you used about it earlier when you talked about the role play? I don't think it's so much role play. I understand it's a very good way to describe it, but it's that thing that they've been through there before. It's not really that big an issue. You know, sure, if they can be forced, if Kerry are still there with 3 or 4 minutes to go, this is the thing. Kerry have to go and fucking win it then, because there's no way the Dubs are going to wilt. You know, you're going to have to go for 77 minutes. We've seen that with Mayo, putting in huge efforts, but always falling short. You've got to go for 77 minutes.
How have you not cursed live on air? How have you not cursed live on air yet?
We're 10 seconds behind.
We're not, unfortunately.
So I think now, it's not a weird thing too in society. People say, "Oh, don't say fuck," you know. You know, my children say fuck. You know, and nobody should say those. And it's a great word, actually.
We might just get back to your final prediction.
It's multifaceted.
A multifaceted prediction.
Yeah, so I think that regardless of what occurs tomorrow, I think that Dublin are a much better team now than they were 2 years ago. I think that now you've got a concentration of goal scoring. They've scored 17 goals this year. They've got the best forward division in the country, the best midfield, the best defensive division, and the best keeper. That generally means you'll win, I have to say. Okay. And ask yourself this question, and I mean this sincerely. I thought during the week about Clifford. Fabulous. I mean, just what a talent he's going to be. He's going to be one of the greatest footballers that ever played the game, and he will win Senior All-Irelands. But as of today, this week, would he get in the Dublin forward line? As of this week?
Yeah.
Do you really think so?
Yeah, I do.
Who would he replace?
Dean Rock, maybe?
Dean Rock said, hold on. This is the sort of thing you don't get in Sky either. Dean is the best free taker in the history of Gaelic games, and since the start of the Super 8s, he has taken 21 frees, including the 45s. How many has he missed? Fuckers, read my columns.
Well,
that I'm reliably informed by an accountant friend of mine is 95.2% success rate. So he'd replace him.
Conor
A free
Callahan's kicked
taker
free.
who hit
Conor
78%.
Callahan's kicked frees. He kicked frees in the 2017 Leinster final and hit 6 or 7 from 7.
That's why you're not the Dublin manager.
I'm happy with my station. On that note, Joe, Alan, Tomás, Martin, and Michael, thanks so much. And thanks so much for joining us tonight. That's all we have time for. Thank you.
Bord Gais Energy, putting customers at the core of under 20 and senior hurling championship action. #hurling to the core.